Emma Brown sat in the small, stuffy office of her solicitor, her fingers trembling slightly as she looked over the document in her hands. The letter had arrived earlier that week, addressed in neat handwriting, bearing the seal of a law firm from HAWORTH, a quaint village in Yorkshire. It was a place she had visited only once as a child, and now, it was the last connection to a relative she barely knew. Her great-aunt, whom she had only heard of in passing, had left her everything. The inheritance wasn't just money or valuables. It was something far more mysterious, a house. She hadn't been expecting this. The letter explained that her great-aunt Matilda Hawthorne had passed away at the age of 97, and in her will, she left Emma a sprawling manor on the outskirts of Haworth. The property was old, perhaps even ancient, but it was hers. The solicitor's voice had been calm, explaining the terms. The house must remain in the family, and Emma had to live there for at least 1 month to accept the inheritance. The one condition was clear. She couldn't leave for that time. The thought of spending a month alone in a place she had no memory of, surrounded by old walls and shadows of the past, unsettled her. But there was no turning back now. Emma had few ties to her life in London. She worked as an architect, but the city had never felt like home. Haworth, a quiet village surrounded by misty moors and old stone houses, could be the escape she needed. Perhaps it would offer peace, away from the noise of her bustling life. As she packed her belongings, Emma wondered what secrets the house might hold. It wasn't just a house. It was part of her family's history. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something waiting for her there, something buried beneath the surface of the seemingly quiet village. Arriving in Haworth, Emma felt an eerie calm. The village, with its cobbled streets and old stone buildings, seemed frozen in time. The house stood at the edge of town, an imposing structure surrounded by overgrown gardens and towering trees. Its windows stared down at her, dark and uninviting. She hesitated at the front door, the heavy brass key cold in her hand. The wind whispered through the trees, and for a moment, Emma thought she heard something else. Footsteps, faint but distinct. She shook the feeling off, reminding herself it was just the wind, nothing more. With a deep breath, she unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air inside was stale, and the house smelled of dust and forgotten years. The hallway stretched out before her, lined with old paintings and grand, yet worn, furniture. She wondered what her great-aunt had been like, living here alone for so many years. Had she ever felt the house's strange presence? Or was it just Emma, who now felt like an intruder in her own inheritance? A creak echoed from the floor above, and Emma froze, her heart racing. She had read about old houses making noises, but this sounded different, like someone walking upstairs. She swallowed hard and made her way up the narrow staircase, each step creaking underfoot. The house seemed to groan with every movement, as though it was alive, watching her. At the top of the stairs, she noticed a door slightly ajar. A faint light spilled from the crack, despite it being late afternoon. Emma hesitated but couldn't resist the pull of curiosity. She pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the room was filled with old furniture covered in sheets. But in the corner, something caught her eye. A small desk, its surface cluttered with papers. As she walked closer, her eyes were drawn to an old leather-bound book. It was open, as though waiting for her to read it. She picked it up cautiously, feeling the weight of it in her hands. The pages were yellowed with age, and the handwriting was elegant, yet the ink had started to fade. The first entry read, "To whoever finds this, you must know the truth. The house holds many secrets, but some things are better left buried." Emma felt a chill run down her spine as the words sank in. What truth? What secrets? Suddenly, she heard a sound behind her. Footsteps. They were close, too close. She turned quickly, but the room was empty. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she clutched the book tightly, unsure whether to investigate further or run out of the house. The wind howled outside, but inside the house, the silence was deafening. That night, Emma barely slept. The manor creaked inside as if breathing with the wind. Every time she thought she had drifted off, a sound would pull her back. Soft footsteps on the landing, the groan of old wood shifting, or the rustle of paper from the room down the hall. She told herself it was only the age of the house playing tricks on her. But even as a rational architect used to old structures, she couldn't explain away the feeling of being watched. At dawn, Emma pulled on a jumper and made her way downstairs to the kitchen. Dust clung to every surface. The air was thick with silence, as if the house were waiting. She filled the kettle and stood by the window, watching the moorland beyond the garden blur into the morning mist. After tea, she returned to the room where she'd found the journal. The old leather-bound book sat exactly where she'd left it, the page still open. Her fingers traced the faded writing. The next entry was dated almost 50 years ago. The whispering began again last night. Always from behind the wallpaper. No one believes me. But it's there. Always listening. Emma frowned. She reached out and touched the wallpaper. It was a dated floral pattern, yellowed and peeling slightly at the corners. On impulse, she tugged gently at a seam. A tiny corner gave way, and she saw something scrawled underneath in pencil. Words. Dozens of them. Scribbled messages hidden beneath the paper. She carefully peeled back more of the wallpaper, revealing layer after layer of frantic writing. She watches from the mirror. Don't open the cellar. It's not the house, it's her. The handwriting grew more erratic the deeper she went. It was clear someone had written these in desperation, long ago. Emma stepped back, heart pounding. She scanned the room and noticed a large ornate mirror above the fireplace. It was covered in a thick veil of dust. Without thinking, she wiped it clean with her sleeve. Her reflection stared back. Tired, pale, but alone. Then behind her, a movement. She spun around, but there was nothing there. Trying to ground herself, she explored more of the house. The dining room was grand but neglected, the chandeliers hanging like forgotten relics. She discovered an old gramophone in the parlor, and a stack of records marked in fading ink. For Matilda. Only when it's quiet. In the study, tucked beneath a pile of ledgers, she found an envelope marked, to be opened by Emma Brown only. Her breath caught. She tore it open with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter in the same elegant script from the journal. Emma, if you are reading this, then the house has chosen you. I never had children of my own, but I always hoped the right soul would return. You will hear whispers, perhaps see things others cannot. Do not ignore them. They are not madness. They are memories the house cannot forget. When the time comes, you must go to the cellar. It holds what we tried to hide. Emma's stomach turned. She hadn't even known there was a cellar. She checked the floor plan stored in one of the drawers. It showed every room, but no mention of a cellar. Yet in the corner, she noticed something odd. A small section of the house's foundation was shaded differently, almost as if someone had tried to obscure it. She returned to the hallway and began tapping the floorboards near the stairwell. Most echoed dully, but one, just one, gave a hollow thud. Pulling back the old carpet, she found a trapdoor, barely visible beneath the years of dust. She reached for the handle, rusted, stiff, and pulled. It creaked open slowly, revealing a set of stone steps that descended into darkness. A sudden gust of wind slammed the parlor door shut behind her. Emma jumped. The air around her turned colder, heavier. From below, deep in the cellar, came a noise. Not footsteps. Not shifting wood. It was a voice. Calling her name. Emma hesitated at the top of the cellar steps. The darkness below was thick, swallowing the weak beam of her torch as though it resented the intrusion. Her fingers gripped the cold iron of the trapdoor as she steadied her breath. Then slowly she descended. The stone steps were slick with age, each one creaking under her weight. Cobwebs brushed her face. The air grew colder, dense with the scent of damp earth and time. When she reached the bottom, she found herself in a low, arched chamber. It wasn't large, but it stretched deep beneath the house. The walls were brick, but not original. These had been built over something else. Something older. Emma swept her torch across the space. Crates lined one side, stacked haphazardly and covered in mildew-stained cloth. A rusted wheelchair stood in one corner, facing the wall. Near the back, a locked wooden cabinet drew her attention. As she stepped closer, a sound behind her made her spin. A soft, scraping drag across the floor. But there was nothing. Only shadows. She turned back to the cabinet. The lock was old, the metal weak with rust. She found a poker leaning against a support beam and pried it open. Inside were files. Dozens of them, neatly arranged, their labels faded but legible. Patient records. She flipped through them. Names, dates, medical notes. All for women. Most dated between 1932 and 1947. Her hand froze when she read one. Matilda Brown. Her great-aunt. The notes were clinical but cold. Patient exhibits hysteria. Claims voices speak through the walls. Sedation administered. Emma's stomach twisted as she read entry after entry, documenting Matilda's decline, the experiments, the isolation. One folder had a photo clipped to the inside. A woman, Matilda, strapped to a chair, eyes wide with terror. Emma dropped it, breath-catching. A scraping came again. This time closer. From behind the far wall. She turned, torch shaking. One section of the cellar wall looked different. Newer bricks. Cement that hadn't aged like the rest. She stepped toward it, heart pounding. There was something behind it. She could feel it. She scanned the floor and found a small chisel among the tools. With trembling hands, she began to chip at the mortar. Bit by bit, the bricks loosened. Her arms ached, but she didn't stop. When the final brick fell away, Emma stumbled back. Beyond the wall was a narrow room. More like a hidden chamber. In the center sat a small iron-framed bed, rusted and decayed. Shackles still hung from the frame. And above it, covering the wall in looping frantic handwriting, were messages written in what looked like charcoal or even dried blood. She is still here. We tried to silence her. Emma will find the truth. The last one stopped her cold. Emma, do not trust Pemberton. She stared, heart racing. Pemberton? The family solicitor? He'd always seemed loyal, quiet. He'd handled the inheritance, the letters. He'd encouraged her to take the house. But he'd never mentioned any of this. Not the patients. Not Matilda's institutionalization. Suddenly, behind her, the cellar door creaked. Slowly. As if someone else was coming down. Emma turned off her torch. Darkness swallowed her whole. But she wasn't alone. Footsteps. Descending the steps one by one. She held her breath. Waiting. Emma froze in the darkness, her heart pounding like thunder in her ears. The steps above creaked under slow, deliberate weight. Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. She moved soundlessly into the hidden chamber, crouching behind the rusted bed frame, torch still clutched in her hand but turned off. The footsteps paused. A soft sigh broke the silence, followed by the groan of an old hinge. Then the cellar door shut again. Locked. Whoever had come down was now inside. Or had left her inside with the unknown. Emma stayed crouched, barely breathing, ears straining for the slightest sound. After a minute that felt like an hour, nothing. No movement. No voice. Just silence. She dared to switch the torch on again, shielding it with her fingers. She returned to the messages on the wall. Her name, the warnings, the desperate scrawl. It was too specific to dismiss. Whoever had written them had known her. Or known she would come. The words seemed recent. And the last message chilled her. Do not let him in again. A cold draft brushed her skin. Then, faintly from behind the far wall, came a whisper. Emma, help me. She spun round, the torch beam darting. Nothing. Just brick and dust and shadows. But the voice came again. Clearer. Please. You must finish what I started. Emma stepped closer to the wall. Who's there? No reply. Just the distant creak of the house above settling into the night. She pressed her hand against the bricks. They were colder than the rest. Almost frozen. Another whisper rose, this time from beneath her feet. Below. Follow the light. Her skin prickled with fear. But she saw it then. An oddity in the floorboards near the far corner. A small metal ring, nearly hidden beneath years of dust. Emma knelt and pulled at it, revealing another trapdoor, narrower than the first. She hesitated, then opened it. The scent that wafted out was mustier, like air that hadn't moved in a century. She pointed the torch down. More steps. Older. Crumbling stone descending into pitch black. She climbed down. This new passageway felt untouched by time. Moss crawled over the walls, and the floor was slick with condensation. The air was thick with silence. And then, another voice. Matilda was not the only one. They took us all. Emma turned sharply. The voice was not loud, yet it echoed, as if spoken from inside her own thoughts. Along the passage, old iron doors lined the walls, small cells. Most were empty. Some had names scratched into the stone. One read Eliza. Another C. Thornbridge. Each cell had a single rusted bed frame, and some still had leather restraints dangling from the posts. Emma's torch flickered. Behind the last door, a light glowed. Soft. Golden. Steady. She crept forward, the hairs on her arms standing on end. Inside the final room, a lantern flickered on a table. The walls were covered in drawings. Faces, symbols, spirals. In the center sat an old woman, her eyes milky and unfocused, her hair long and gray. She looked directly at Emma. "You came," the woman whispered. "At last." Emma stepped back. "Who are you?" The woman's face twitched into a sad smile. "I was the first. Before they brought the others. I kept the truth alive, waiting for you." Emma's voice shook. "How do you know me?" "You're a Brown. You carry the mark. It's always passed through the women. The ones who can hear the walls speak." Emma looked around the cell, heart hammering. "But Matilda." Matilda was brave. They silenced her when she got too close. "But you can end it. The house chose you." The woman's eyes suddenly sharpened. "But be careful. He's watching. Always watching." "Who?" Emma asked, but the woman was gone. Not dead. Just gone. The cell was empty. The lantern remained lit. And in the silence, Emma felt the house breathe. Then, above her, a single crash echoed from the drawing room. Furniture upended. Glass shattering. Someone was searching for her. And they were no longer trying to be quiet. Emma scrambled up the narrow stone steps, her breath tight in her throat. Every creak, every echo seemed louder now, amplified by fear. The shattered sound from the drawing room still rang in her ears. Whoever was in the house had grown careless, or confident. They knew she was down there. Emerging into the first cellar room, she moved quickly, careful not to knock over the broken furniture. Her torchlight danced across the stone walls as she listened for more sounds above. Silence returned, heavy and unnatural. She dashed up to the main floor. Moonlight streamed through the shattered windowpane, glass scattered across the floor like ice. The drawing room had been ransacked. Cushions tossed aside, books thrown to the ground, drawers hanging open. Someone had been looking for something. But they were gone now. Emma crept through the hallway, the torch gripped tight in her hand. At the far end, the library door stood slightly ajar. She pushed it open, every muscle tense. The scent of old leather and dust greeted her, strangely comforting. She stepped inside, her eyes falling on the shelf Matilda's letter had mentioned, the one lined with journals. Most were untouched, but one space was empty. She ran her fingers across the spines, then noticed a small black book lying on the floor, partially hidden under a fallen atlas. She picked it up. The leather was cracked, the pages yellowed with age. Inside, the handwriting was spidery, urgent. It wasn't Matilda's journal. It was Charles Thornbridge's. Emma's heart pounded as she flipped through the pages. The entries started formally, notes on the house, the village, his practice, but gradually grew erratic. Words scratched out, rambling thoughts, names repeated over and over. Then, a phrase circled in thick ink. "The light must never be buried. If it fades, the darkness returns." Emma read on. There were mentions of sessions, references to control, and lists of women's names: Eliza, Margaret, Anne. Emma recognized some from the cells. Then, one final entry chilled her. "Matilda has grown too bold. She speaks of justice. She knows. The seal beneath the floor must never be broken. If she opens it, he will return. He." A chill swept through her. She flipped the page, and there it was, drawn in frantic strokes, a symbol, an eye inside a circle, encircled again by flames. Beneath it, one line. "He lives where silence gathers." Emma looked up. The silence in the library had shifted. It was deeper now. Pressing in. She turned. The door had closed behind her. No wind. No footsteps. Just closed. Her hand moved to the torch. The light flickered, dimmed, and went out. She froze in pitch darkness. And then from just behind her ear a breath. "You were never meant to find that." Emma spun round, the torch clicking uselessly. A shape moved across the room, swift and low. "Show yourself," she shouted, voice trembling. No reply. She backed toward the door, groping for the handle. It was locked. From the corner of the room, a whisper rose. "You woke him. You read the name. You opened the path." Emma banged on the door, adrenaline rising. "Let me out." But the room had grown colder. The whispers multiplied, circling her. She remembered the symbol. The seal. Beneath the floor. Emma forced herself to breathe. If Charles Thornbridge had sealed something under the house, something even Matilda feared, then that was the root of it all. That was where she needed to go. Suddenly, the door swung open. Emma didn't question it. She ran. Down the hallway. Past the shattered window. Back through the cellar door. As she descended the stone steps again, her torch sputtered back to life. The tunnel she had found earlier stretched out before her like a mouth. But now, something had changed. At the far end, the final cell door stood open. Inside, a new message had been scratched into the stone. Still fresh. Still crumbling. "You read the journal. He is awake." Emma hesitated at the mouth of the tunnel. The air was thick, musty, and colder than before. Her torchlight flickered across damp stone and the rusted bars of the cells, but it was the open door at the end that drew her. It stood like a black wound in the rock, its threshold marked by old clawed scratches and soot. She stepped inside. The final cell was small, no larger than a cupboard. The air was staler here, unmoved for decades. In the far corner, beneath a crumbling cot, Emma spotted something glinting faintly in the dust. She crouched and reached out, pulling free a slim metal box bound with a lock that had long since corroded. With one swift tug, the lid gave way. Inside, wrapped in brittle cloth, lay an assortment of relics. A tarnished pendant, a roll of yellowed parchment, and a cracked photograph. Emma unrolled the paper first. It was a map of the house, but beneath it, drawn in ink so faded it was almost gone, were markings that showed a hidden passage beneath the east wing. A secret chapel? Emma studied the photograph. It showed Charles Thornbridge, grim-faced and standing beside a woman who looked faintly familiar. Matilda, but younger, smiling faintly. Behind them loomed the very house Emma now stood in, its windows dark as if watching. She pocketed the items and turned to leave, but a voice stopped her. "Not from behind. From the wall. You bear her blood. The door will open." Emma froze. The voice was deep, not quite human, as though something were speaking through layers of stone and time. Her throat dried. "Who are you?" No answer. She stepped back into the corridor, heart thundering. The torches along the walls, cold and used, were suddenly alight with faint blue fire. One by one, they flared, leading down the corridor, as though beckoning. She followed. The passage twisted and dipped until the stone gave way to older brick, almost Roman in its shape. At last, it opened into a vast underground hall, domed and echoing. Arches crumbled under the weight of time, and at its center stood a pedestal, cracked down the middle. Emma approached. Upon the pedestal was a book, huge, bound in dark leather, its pages etched with symbols and writing she couldn't read. Above it, on the wall, was the same eye symbol she'd seen in Charles's journal. Suddenly, the voice returned. She tried to bind him, but blood speaks louder than seals. "You opened the wound." Emma backed away. Her torch dimmed again. Then footsteps. Not hers. From the far end of the chamber, a figure appeared. Hooded, tall, moving with calm precision. Emma stumbled behind a pillar, heart in her mouth. The figure approached the pedestal, bowed its head, and began to chant. Emma couldn't understand the words, but they scratched at her mind, twisted the air around her. She felt sick, dizzy. The chanting stopped. "You may come out now, Miss Brown." Her breath caught. The figure turned. Lowered the hood. It was Mr. Aldwych, the solicitor. His expression was cold. His eyes, pale, ancient, fixed on hers with knowing cruelty. "I wondered when you'd find your way down here. You were always meant to. Your mother did too." Emma's world tilted. "My mother?" He nodded. "She tried to stop me. Failed. And now, here you are, the last thread of that bloodline, stumbling blindly into what she feared most." Emma stepped back. "What is this place?" Aldwych looked around as though admiring it. "This? This is where it begins again. Before she could move, the book on the pedestal began to hum. The ground trembled, and the wall behind the eye symbol cracked. Emma's heart raced as Mr. Aldwych took a step forward, his eyes glinting with something cold and ancient. She could hardly breathe, her body frozen in place by a mixture of fear and disbelief. The air in the underground hall felt suffocating, the weight of centuries pressing down on her shoulders. The book on the pedestal hummed louder now, as though it were alive, calling her name. "You must understand, Miss Brown," Aldwych said softly, his voice echoing around the chamber. "This was always meant to be. You, your mother, your grandmother. All of you are bound to this house. The bloodline runs deeper than you know." Emma's mind whirled. My grandmother? What does this have to do with her? Aldwych stepped closer, his every movement deliberate, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. "Your grandmother was the last to truly understand the power of this house," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "She knew the truth about the curse, about the pact that was made long ago." Emma's stomach churned. She felt as though the ground beneath her feet was slipping away. "A curse? What are you talking about?" "You really have no idea, do you?" Aldwich's lips curled into a twisted smile. The Thornbridge family was never just any family. They made a deal, a dark one. A pact that binds them to the house, and to something far older, far darker. A bloodline that can never break free. Emma's mind raced. "And my mother? Why didn't she tell me?" "She tried to stop it," Aldwych said with a cruel laugh. "But she was weak, just like all of them. They tried to hide the truth from you, but it's in your blood. You can't escape it, Emma." A chill ran down her spine as his words sank in. The truth was starting to reveal itself, but it was more terrifying than anything she could have imagined. "You've come to take your rightful place, haven't you?" Aldwych continued. "The house belongs to you now, Miss Brown. And with it, all the power, all the secrets." Emma's hands trembled, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I don't want this power," she said, her voice steady despite the fear swirling in her chest. "I didn't come here for this. I just wanted to know the truth." Aldwich's smile faded, replaced by a look of pure malice. "The truth? The truth is that you are the key. Without you, the house cannot survive. Without you, the curse cannot continue." Emma backed away, her heart pounding in her ears. "No. This isn't happening. I won't let it." But before she could move further, the walls trembled. The hum from the book grew louder, almost deafening, and the ground beneath her feet began to shake violently. The stone floor cracked, revealing a deep abyss below. Aldwych reached out, his hand like a cold, dead claw. "You don't have a choice." Emma's vision blurred as the shadows around her twisted, forming shapes that danced in the periphery of her sight. The air became thick, suffocating, and her chest tightened as though something was trying to break free from the depths of the house. She couldn't breathe. The walls seemed to close in, and she felt the weight of the curse bearing down on her. "No!" she screamed, but her voice was drowned out by the roar of the wind that suddenly filled the chamber. With a final desperate effort, she reached for the book on the pedestal, her fingers brushing the cold leather. The moment her fingers touched the book, a searing pain shot through her entire body. She cried out, her vision blurring with white-hot light. The shadows around her twisted into horrific shapes, swirling and writhing like creatures from some otherworldly nightmare. And then, in an instant, everything stopped. The wind died down. The ground ceased shaking. The shadows faded into nothingness. Emma stood there, gasping for air, her heart racing in her chest. She could still feel the lingering presence of the dark force, but for now, it was gone. Aldwych was gone too. She was alone. For a moment, Emma just stood there, overwhelmed by what had just happened. The truth had come crashing down, and it was more terrifying than she could have imagined. But she knew one thing for certain. This was not over. The curse had not been broken, and she had a part to play in it, whether she wanted to or not. The night outside was still, as though the world had stopped turning. Emma stood alone in the dimly lit chamber, her heart racing with the weight of the secret she had uncovered. The shadows that once danced freely around the room now seemed to hesitate, as though they too were waiting for the next move. She could feel the presence of the house closing in around her, its ancient walls pressing upon her mind, trying to pull her back into its darkness. She looked down at her trembling hands, the memories of Aldwich's words echoing in her mind. He had spoken of a curse, a pact made generations ago, one that bound her family to the house. But now, after all she had uncovered, Emma knew that the true battle was not against the curse itself. It was against the part of her that would be tempted to accept it. She had come to HAWORTH in search of answers, not knowing she would be forced to confront her own bloodline, the very thing that tied her to the horrors of the past. But there was still time. There was still a choice. The air grew colder, and she turned her gaze towards the entrance, where the dim glow of the lanterns cast long shadows on the stone floor. The path ahead was unclear, yet something urged her forward. Something beyond her own will. Suddenly, the heavy oak door to the chamber creaked open, and a familiar voice rang through the silence. "Emma!" She spun around to find Marcus standing in the doorway, his expression weary but determined. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, there was only the quiet understanding between them. He had been there through it all, through the puzzles and the discoveries, through the fear and the growing sense of dread. He had believed in her when no one else had, and now, more than ever, he seemed to be the only anchor in this storm of uncertainty. "What happened?" Marcus asked, stepping into the room. "I heard the rumblings, the wind. What did you do?" Emma struggled to find the right words. She had no idea how to explain what had occurred, or how much deeper the truth went than anyone could ever have anticipated. "I touched the book," she whispered, her voice shaky. "I think it's still here, Marcus. The power. It's still alive. It's in the house, in the walls, in me." Marcus stepped closer, his eyes dark with concern. "But you stopped it, right? You can stop it." Emma shook her head slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know. I don't think I can. I don't know how to get rid of it." The room seemed to grow colder still, and Emma felt a cold hand grip her heart. Her mind flashed to the moment she had spent poring over the books, the journals, the hidden passages that led her here. Everything was pointing to one thing. One unavoidable truth. She was the key. Marcus watched her carefully, his expression softening. "Emma, whatever happens, we'll face it together. You don't have to carry this burden alone." But Emma knew the truth now, the heavy, suffocating weight of it all. She could feel the house reaching out, calling to her, as though it knew that she was the one who could either set it free or bind it forever. "I wish it was that simple," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. Then, without warning, the air in the room shifted. A soft, almost imperceptible hum filled the space, the same hum she had felt before. The book, the very thing that had bound her to this place, began to glow once more, its cover shimmering in the dim light. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she realized the inevitable truth. "You have to make a choice, Emma," a voice echoed from the shadows. It was Aldwick's voice, but it came not from his body, but from the very house itself. "You were always meant for this. The house is waiting. You are the final piece." Emma's eyes narrowed, the weight of the decision pressing upon her like 1,000 stones. She was at a crossroads, the last step in a journey she never asked for. The power that had called to her now stood before her, more dangerous than she could ever have imagined. Her thoughts swirled, and for a moment, she almost felt the pull. Almost. But then she remembered Marcus. She remembered her mother's face, the warning in her eyes before she had disappeared. She remembered everything that had led her to this moment. No matter how strong the pull, she would not let the house win. She would not be bound by this curse, no matter how it tried to tempt her. With a final resolute breath, Emma turned away from the book and faced the door. "I won't let it control me," she said firmly, her voice unwavering. Marcus stepped forward, relief flooding his expression. "Emma, you don't have to do this alone. Let's go. Together." And so, as they walked towards the door, the house seemed to tremble in protest. But Emma didn't look back. She didn't need to. She had made her choice. The curse may have been born here, but it would not live here any longer. The house of HAWORTH would remain silent. For now.